hey, I'll take what I can get. Wonderful thing with my grass and my flowers. There's something different about God's water and that water that come out the water hose. So I appreciate the sunshine and the rain. Good to see everybody here today. If nothing else, I can count on a faithful few. And I appreciate that. And I dare say that you can do the same for me. Worship has been the underlying theme. And as I said before, this is not me picking. This is what the book says, but it's also what the Bible is saying. And so the lessons that we have been talking about are calling for us to understand worship. Okay? It might also be calling for us to understand that we are not up to par in our worship. Okay? Sometimes you have to say some things that are uncomfortable, but it may be true. When we've been talking about worship, and I gave you a definition, worship can be expressed through various actions, including praise, prayer, sacrifice, and living a life that reflects God's character. Dare I say that the lessons have been picking on each one of those, but it may be picking on each one of those because we need to have each one of those. It is kind of scary that we live in a time where phones are present during the worship time. Used to be that if you stood in front of a crowd, especially at church, but I know in school as well, the only thing you had to combat was sleep. That was the only thing you had to combat, was somebody falling asleep on you. But now, you got to combat somebody scrolling through Instagram, Facebook, or Amazon. And then you also got to focus on the fact that somebody has dozed off on you. So, all of those continue to be obstacles of worship. Something so simple as going to bed on time so that you won't be tired when it's worship time. Something so simple as anticipation. Young men just went to prom at my school, and their anticipation started in February. They didn't go to prom until May. But the anticipation, this is what I'm going to wear. This is what I'm going to drive. This is who I'm going with. This is how the night will go. We need that same enthusiasm and anticipation for worship service. Okay. Some of us are pretty good at worshiping on Sunday. We are excellent. But worship has no time frame. And it has no schedule. Worship, to me, and I speak personal, and I hope some of this connects, I've had, and I do have, worship service on the treadmill at Planet Fitness. I told my wife, my new study habit is daily, I work on my Sunday school lesson at Planet Fitness. And I know people walk by me and they can't understand why I don't see them, but I'm not really focused on that. The same playlist that I give you all every Sunday, I'm listening to at about 5:30, 6 o'clock on the treadmill. And only if I get 10 minutes, then that works for me. But that worship becomes a breeding ground for greatness. Now, greatness doesn't always mean that everything is going to be hunky-dory. That's not what that means. But what that does mean is when times are not as good as you would like them to be, you're able to deal with them in such a way that God is pleased. Now, in today's lesson, we're going to talk about one who messed up several times, but still one display of his faith pleased God. We're going to mess up. Dare I say, we may fail. We're going to lose. But it's also very imperative that we understand that all of life's lessons come from losses. First time you jumped up, tried to walk, you failed. We can get that. First time you jumped on that bike, you scraped your knee, you failed. But the lesson was, I'm not going to do that again. I'm not going to do whatever that was that caused me to fall. Again, I'm not doing that again. Now, I might do something else. But I think they say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And so none of us are insane. None of us are crazy. But a lot of us are hard-headed. So the hard-headedness is what gets us in a place where our discipline looks like punishment sometimes. You know, discipline is because I'm trying to teach you. But punishment is I'm trying to hurt you. But because we are so focused on doing wrong, when we are disciplined, we take it as punishment. And that's not the case. Let's get a quick word of prayer. Our Father and our God, we thank you for these days of study. We ask you, Lord, a special blessing on the fathers. Not just the ones that are here today, but the ones who are present. Because we do know that pretty much 90%, 95% of success is just being there. We thank you, Lord, for an awesome example of father. God being the ultimate father. And even in today's lesson, Abraham, showing that when you receive a child, it is imperative that you give them back to God. We ask you, Lord, to continue to bless us as we go about worshiping in today's service. We ask you, Lord, to be excited about what you have planned for us and allow the Holy Spirit to stay with us as long as we can stand it. We thank you, Lord, for life, love, and experience, and thy will be done. Amen. Before I go any further, does anyone have anything that has stood out in these last couple of lessons? I don't care what it is. Something that was said, something that pointed you in the right direction, something that rubbed you the wrong way. Anyone? Anyone? Anyone got anything? Raise your hand, I'll come to you. The best part of any lesson is review. A lot of times we are afraid of tests because we don't prepare ourselves.
What stands out to me mostly is that God has a specific plan designed for his people, and he will not accept anything less than that, particularly when it comes down to offering and particularly when it comes down to worship. He demanded because he is God, and he's God all by himself.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. That's a good takeaway. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
One of the things that stood out to me was last week when we were talking about Noah and how we talked about he was never rattled, like he never got mad at God, and like I kind of feel like that's the season we're in right now. Like there's a saying that says you can't ask God for a lot and get mad when your plate is full. So that's kind of just something that resonated. And then with him, he always calm. He never got rattled. So
Somebody, anybody. I get nervous when I got to do all the talking. Here you go.
Okay, one thing that I got from it was a couple things I got from it, but what I like the most is after Noah was on the ark for all those days, when he came out, one thing that he wanted to do was to praise God. And so that's
Somebody, anybody.
I think what I got most out of it, I got out about Noah. He wasn't afraid of whatever. When God told him whatever when God was talking to him, he listened to what he had to say, and whatever he told him to do, he did just what he was told to do. Because when he said told him build an ark, a lot of people didn't they think that it's going to rain. But see, when he built the ark, a lot of people didn't. I would say they didn't believe him because there wasn't a cloud in the sky. But when he told them, but when it did started raining, everybody started running to the ark. But then that was too late. Then God had closed the door.
Yeah, I like when you said everybody start running to the ark. They said 9/11 was the one of the biggest times that people started running back to the church. That was a symbol of rain. They thought the world was coming to an end. But the sad thing is, once everything seemed like it was all good, they stopped coming. Same with COVID. I said we were hard-headed, didn't I? Yeah. Somebody else, anybody? Nobody else. I'm a horrible teacher. Nobody got nothing out of anything. Nobody got anything. Nothing stuck out in anybody's mind. Nobody, anybody. What's your name? Y'all say hello to this visitor over here. What's your name? Sister Harassed. She says she feels harassed. Her name is Sister Feels Harassed. Tell me something.
Go ahead. I think just the overall, just thinking about worship and how we worship, and that worship is not just as it's defined. You know, we think of worship as it's multifaceted, if I could say anything. It's more than just showing up here on Sunday. It should be an ever ongoing thing.
I like that word, multifaceted. It's got many layers. It's a lot involved in worship. Anyone else before I get started? Anyone that came in late? I said, is there anything that has stood out in any lesson that we've had so far? Anyone? Anybody? Going once? All right. Well, I thank you all for that input. Again, I say review is very important. If we go week to week without trying to go back to what happened the week before, we run the risk of not being able to connect what God is saying to us. If there's a sermon and you're not taking notes and you don't look back at it, are you really putting forth the effort to worship when you come here? I have some sermon notes that go back so far. And I'm sure if I look around at my house, I got some written, because I started taking them on my phone. But I got some written notes from years ago. And, you know, again, I challenge you to jot these things down. You'll be surprised at how they come back to you. And even when you think a sermon is not good, you'll mess around and find something. You'll be searching for. If you're searching for God, he'll show up. Even in something that you think he's not even present in. And so these are the types of things that we do to worship. Find God. Find God, and you'll soon find that he's not lost. You are. So I guess I should be saying, reveal yourself to God. And that comes through all types of praise and worship on a daily basis. Here we go. Today's lesson is called Abraham Makes an Offering. And so we talked about Cain and Abel and their offering. We talked about Noah, and which ends up being his offering once he gets off that ark. And today we're talking about an offering from Abraham. And so, again, when we start to pay attention, offering, worship, offering, these things, they go together. What are you offering to God? What are you offering to those who need to see God? Are you an offering yourself to God? Those are some very important questions. When we look at what we've talked about so far, it says we have learned about Cain and Abel. We've also learned about Noah, and today we're going to learn about Abraham. Cain and Abel, they talked about in that lesson, or we talked about in that lesson, that it's the condition of your heart, or if your condition is deficient, your worship is meaningless. What are you doing this for? Why are you here? What is your intent? Worshiping Christ is most important in our service to Christ. Worship should stem from a sincere and loving heart, expressing a deep reverence and an appreciation for God. Definition for worship, once again. Worship can be expressed through various actions, including praise, prayer, sacrifice, and living a life that reflects God's character. Abel's life is an example of sacrifice, taking the best and giving it to God. Noah showed us how to live a life that reflects God's character, because if it wasn't for how he lived, he would not have been chosen to build the ark. But now there's something in that. And I don't know if we touched on that. There were 8 people on the ark. And those 8 people, 7 of them were there because of their relationship to Noah. Sometimes you are blessed to bless others, but most of the time others receive blessings from you because of how you display that you're God's own. I don't know if I touched on that last week, and I wanted to get that. Noah showed us how to live life that reflects God's character and how, when, and where to praise God. That's what Liz brought up. Immediately after the flood was over, Noah went to worshiping. Why? Because God saved him. We should be worshiping because God saved us. If we understand that, then worship is on the calendar every day.
Another point that came out, especially with Cain and Abel, is recognizing the God we serve. He doesn't change. God did not reject Cain. He rejected his offering.
That's correct.
He did not allow. He said, listen, go and reconsider, and I will accept yours too. So God is often telling us when we're not in complete alignment with his program, that he gives us opportunity to get right.
He always gives us a way out. But sometimes our own stupidity blinds us from seeing that way out, that ego. God gave Cain so many opportunities, and he still didn't give him the punishment, the discipline that he deserved. And even in that, Cain's ego would not allow him to say, I was wrong. I've learned, and I try to give you some personal stories because I don't want to indict anyone, nor do I want to throw a blanket on the whole congregation. But I've learned most of the time when I say, when I'm wrong, that I'm wrong, things get better. There's no need in knowing that you're wrong and continuing to be wrong. That's crazy. So I'm just going to wrong this thing until it becomes right. That's funny. Because it never becomes right. And so now we still look at Cain as the idiot that did not take God's olive branch. We still look at Abel as the best and first sacrificer ever. Abel's life is an example of sacrifice, taking the best and giving it to God. Noah now, today, last week, Noah showed us how and where to worship. Key words we remember, the offerings of Cain and Abel. The key word was offering. Noah builds an altar was the title. Key word is altar. Now today, Abraham makes his faith display while in a very challenging position. He is tested, being told to give back the very thing that he was promised. Giving new meaning to give back what he blesses you with. It is also a great Father's Day lesson. Abraham's actions and sacrifice show us how to worship. Our lesson comes from Genesis 22, 1 through 14. And it goes this way. Sometime later, God tested Abraham. He said to him, Abraham, here am I, he replied. Then God said, take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you. Early the next morning, Abraham got up and loaded his donkey. He took with him 2 of his servants and his son Isaac. When he had cut enough wood for the burnt offering, he set out for the place God had told him about. On the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. He said to his servants, stay here with the donkey while I and the boy go over there. We will worship, and then we will come back to you. Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and placed it on his son Isaac. And he himself carried the fire and the knife. As the 2 of them went on together, Isaac spoke up and said to his father Abraham, Father? Yes, my son, Abraham replied. The fire and the wood are here, Isaac said. But where's the lamb for the burnt offering? Abraham answered, God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. And the 2 of them went on together. When they reached the place God had told him about, Abraham built an altar there and arranged the wood on it. He bound his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Then he reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven, Abraham, Abraham. Here I am, he replied. Do not lay a hand on that boy, he said. Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son. Abraham looked up, and there in the thicket he saw a ram caught by his horns. He went over and took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called that place, the Lord will provide. And to this day it is said, on the mountain of the Lord it will be provided. Abraham makes an offering. Let me first off start by saying, Reverend Wiley, you gave me some great lessons. There has been some difficult ones, but these are pretty great, I would say. But now, with these being so good, you run the risk of overlooking some things that you've never seen before. And so while we learn these in Sunday school as kids, we hardly ever dig deep into them. We know that as elementary school kids, we know about Noah, and we know about line them up 2 by 2, put them on the ark. We know about all that. We know about Cain and Abel, but we really never talk about the murder aspect of it. It's too much for kids. And today we talk about a man who is on the verge of killing his son. It's all in how you say it, too. When we get finished today, I would like for us to be able to understand that tests reveal the preparation of the one tested. We fear tests a lot of times because we don't prepare ourselves. Some tests expose the character of the one being tested. This is too much. I think I'm going to run away. I'm just leaving that right there. God's people will continue to face tests and trials. I often say, when I find the man or woman who came up with happily ever after, we're going to have some discussion. Because there is no such thing as happily ever after. And many of us mess up because we think that we should be, by now I should be in happily ever after. The only happily ever after I can even think about would be heaven. Yeah. And so we need to take that out of our little kid story. It's just when you get to that part, don't even read it. They lived. But it's important for us to know God's people will continue to face tests and trials. We can be confident that God will be with us in our trials as we grow in faith. Perseverance and maturity, God always provides, but not always in the ways we expect. God challenges his people to remain faithful to and obey him, even in the most difficult times. And so we read in the Bible about crazy leaders, crazy kings, wars and battles. We read about those. And we read about the people who withstand these times. We talk about the children of Israel and them being slaves in Egypt. We talk about all these things, but then when we come to Trump, it's like we've never seen this before. We're still surprised when things that Revelation has told us were going to happen, we're still surprised when they happen. As I said earlier, 9/11 and major pandemics are the only things that get a vast majority of us to church. We wait until we're sick to take the medicine instead of using preventative measures. If you eat the fruits and the vegetables, then you don't have to worry about what the pork and the sodas bring about. Preventative measures. And so we are so busy caught up in what we want that we completely overlook what we're supposed to be doing. God saved us, we should be worshiping him. Why do we wait until we're in trouble? If we worship on a regular basis, we realize that trouble really ain't trouble. It's just an opportunity to trust God and what he said he was going to do. It's all in the perspective. But if we don't allow ourselves to slow down, you've heard this before, all Christians should be observant. You should be looking at things differently. As a Christian, you should be looking at things differently. Because if you don't, you run the risk of being a part of the world that has no knowledge of God. Let me get this right. You read every day, you come to church, you do all of this studying to look like you have no knowledge of God. What a waste of time. Abraham was a man of spiritual highs and lows. He was not perfect. His faith was strong, but inconsistent. Now, I can add all of our names in this. Yeah, let's put our names in this. But this is why the Bible is here, to let you know that all have sinned and fallen short. But get out of that and let's go on and move forward. He told his wife to say that she was his sister to protect himself from the Egyptians. Hopefully you all remember some of this. He handed Sarah over to a pagan king, failing to trust God once again. And then when we get into today's lesson, he'd had a son with Sarah, his wife's maidservant, when God promised him, he had a son with Sarah's maidservant, Hagar. Y'all correct me when I'm wrong. When God promised him that Sarah, his wife, would have a son. That's some old, I'm going to do it my way type stuff. You taking too long type stuff. And so when we talk about staying patient and poised, it's understanding that God is not going to operate on our way of thinking.
You talk about the little things that we haven't seen, and every time we revisit it, it comes up. But two of the things that came up immediately was, first of all, Abraham allowed Sarah to pull that stunt. Because she, at laughing that God was going to make her the one, come to the conclusion she's too old. Right. The other aspect of it is about, it's so funny that we have a messed up memory. Abraham went up there to offer, quote, his only son, which was not correct. That was the promised son. He had another son. So you look at that, but it shows you how when we get in God's mix, we mess it up all the time. And God had to come back and correct it. And we think, but then the other point, I'm going to leave you on this one. I'm so excited about the fact that Abraham told the servants, my son and I will be back. So he went up with confidence. And that's what we have to do, walk with God in confidence.
So now, just in case, let me kind of hit on something that he said. The first thing that he talked about was the fact that that was not his only son, but that was his promised son. So now, Hagar being property of his wife, Sarah. Y'all understand what I'm saying? She was like a slave. Sarah was being made fun of by the other wives because she did not have a kid. She did not have a son. Y'all with me so far? So she was so messed up that she wasn't like everybody else. There's tragedy in being an and them person. You'll never say, there's Kyle and them, and I'm in the group. You're going to have to say my name too. You're going to have to say, there go Kyle and there's Bo and them. Then all the rest of them can fall in. She wanted to be an and them. She wanted to be a part of Mary and them have sons. And so her wanting to be a part of the group, her wanting to be what, I'm saying stuff that keeps coming to mind, her wanting to gallop with the herd pushed her to do some things that God was not pleased with. Okay, that's the her part. But the him part, Abraham should have said, look here, wife, I understand I understand how you feel. But God said. But what he did was, as many of us probably would, look. I'm tired of hearing her mouth. She keep nagging me about cleaning these gutters. I'm just going to go out here, jump on this ladder while it's raining. And before you know it, you on the ground somewhere, broke your neck because you done let your confusion mistake itself for conviction, and you're doing the wrong thing. So now that might have caused an argument. Yeah, it's going to be some struggle in many relationships. But you're going to hear me say this again. Doing what's right is not always comfortable, but it's always right. And so when we are afraid of confrontation, we are afraid of growing. I don't mean pick up a hammer and throw it at somebody. That ain't what I'm talking about. But what I'm talking about is being mature enough to stand on what you believe in. That's big right there. But also being open enough that if someone presents better information, then you ready to move in that way. I just described marriage. I don't know if y'all even caught that at all. I just described marriage right there. But now we get an Ishmael. And Ishmael becomes Hagar's confidence. So now she looks at Sarah like, I got a son, you don't. I'm better than you. And so Sarah said, hey, man, get rid of her. Send her and her son up out of here. And so God says, all right, again, I'm going to look out for him. We're going to send him away. And I'm going to make sure that he's blessed. But he's not the promised son. So in this commentary, it says, after God sends Ishmael away, he no longer becomes Abraham's responsibility. That's tough right there. But now, years go by, Abraham is 100-some years old, and the promised son is born. And so that's where we are here today. Did I confuse anybody? Did that make sense? And so now we're here today with the promised son. And God said, take him up on the mountain and sacrifice him. Man, what? You just took me through all of this? You just promised me this to take the promise away? But he never questioned. So now maybe his missteps in years before put him in a situation where he understood, I've been tripping all these times. Let me listen to God. It's a wonderful place to be in when you say, I've been here before. I'm not going to do what I did the last time I was here. I've been here before. So you know what? Let me go this way. Let me do it God's way. Because I cussed him out the last time, and I got fired. I was right, but that wasn't what God wanted me to do. I got a son, but that wasn't the son that God wanted me to have. You got something to say?
That's our problem nowadays. We tried our way. We want to try our way first to see can we get by on it. But now if we go to God, take God with it from the beginning, we won't have the problem that we already having.
We do it our way, we'll be wandering in the wilderness for 40 years for a trip that could have took 4 days.
Take God way out from the beginning. Then you automatically say.
There you go.
And that's where we get the concept that if God done it once, he'll do it again. And see, Abraham learned a valuable lesson. He laughed, or he didn't laugh. He got caught up in the thought of age and et cetera that God couldn't be God. Right. But then he found out God is God. And see, Abraham knew that if God gave it to me once, he'll give it to me again. And if he requires what he gave me, it was his in the first place.
So now, here's the deal. What Reverend Wiley just said is what we're left to interpret through his silence. The fact that he didn't say anything gives us an idea that he was solid in following God. But it does not mean that he wasn't messed up behind it. See, it's a lot when I told y'all when we look at this again and not as little kids, but as grown folks. Our first inclination is to assume that because he didn't do anything, this was easy for him. Because he didn't say anything, this was easy for him. But that, if you think from a mature Christian point of view, his silence might have meant he was messed up. I can't believe that I gotta give up my son. I can't believe that this is what he told me to do. But it still says the next morning he got up to do. I said it, I'll say it again. Doing what's right is not always comfortable, but it's always right. And so many times when we find ourselves not wanting to come to Sunday school, not wanting to come to church, not wanting to come to prayer meetings, Bible study, not wanting to come to choir rehearsal, sometimes we got to do it even though humanly we don't want to do it. But it's our opportunity to worship. There's been many times that I ain't want to come. And I get here and was like, man, I'm glad I came. I'm glad I was here. And then you don't ever know what God has in store, not just for you, but for somebody else. It's been times that I showed up and somebody come and give me, such and such looking for you. Who? There you go. Oh, man, I ain't seen him in years. Yeah, man, I've been locked up, but I knew you went to this church. He says in verse 22, here I am. He was where he was supposed to be. Here I am. I remember years ago, my grandmother had to do the welcome. She had a mini stroke in front of the church. Right there in front of the church. And Pastor Howard said, just think if she hadn't have been where she was supposed to be. It was a house full to get her to safety. But what if she had been down at the Guardians baseball game where millions of people were there, but don't nobody know her? And so they don't know what she's going through. So when you are where you're supposed to be, big things happen. And a lot of times they happen for other people and you don't even know it. So it says, verse 22 says, sometime later God tested Abraham. He said to him, Abraham, here I am, he replied. Then God said, take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you. That sounds so matter of fact. That sounds like, run to the store, give me some cigarettes. That's just simple. Hey, grab some toilet paper while you're out. Like God said, take your son and kill him. What? It reads so matter-of-factly. that challenge came as everyday goings on. And we are challenged every day. So our matter of fact challenge come at us just like this one did. We move on. It says Abraham was 100 years old when Isaac was born. During this scripture, Isaac was old enough to carry wood. So that gives us a faint idea of the amount of time that has passed. God does not tempt anyone. I've heard this being said that God was tempting Abraham. No, he wasn't. Okay, let's play with them words. Tempt means to make someone want to have or to do something, especially something that is unnecessary or wrong. Abraham didn't want to do this. Tempting is them red velvet cupcakes that y'all was selling over there. That's tempting. I want one of them. How much? But this wasn't no temptation. This wasn't no Otis. This wasn't no Silent Night. This wasn't no temptation right here. Okay. Test. A procedure intended to establish the quality, performance, or reliability of something. Wow. Those words are excellent. Reliability? Okay, let me just say it this way. God be trying to see how good you is. Did that make sense? You caught that, huh? That was real ebonically correct. God be trying to see how good you is. He want to see. He want to see where you are. He want to see if you'll ride the bus to church. But he also want to see that if he bless you with that car, if you'll drive past the church. Y'all got that? He want to see if he make everything cool and then take everything from you, will you keep worshiping? You see how God worked? Just walked her right in here. When you have living testimonies, you have to pay attention to them. And so even though you slay me, that ain't even in the notes. God called Isaac Abraham's only son. This is because Isaac was the son God promised Abraham. Abraham had previously fathered Ishmael, I told you about that, through Hagar, but he was the son that resulted from him trying to fulfill God's promises through ancient custom rather than divine provision. It was customary that if one couldn't have a child, that you could have a child with the maid servant. But God didn't tell them to do that. That's saying, I got it, God. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, God. I know I asked you for something, but you're taking too long, so I get it. I do that all the time. Hey, man, I asked you to come over here and look at this porch, but you didn't look at the porch, so I'm going to call somebody else. That's some human stuff. You cannot play God like that. Stick and stay. Sit still. Stay patient and poised. God didn't reject Ishmael. He blessed and made him a great nation, but he was no longer Abraham's responsibility. God had promised that Abraham would be the father of a great nation, but how if Isaac is gone? We got to ask some questions. See, this Christian thing ain't always smooth sailing. And sometimes we got to ask the hard questions. Sometimes, I just had a conversation over there with my wife. Sometimes you got to have some tough conversations. Earl, sometimes we got to talk about if Kirk Franklin is really what we should be talking about or singing, doing worship service. We sometimes we got to talk about your dress and how you come into the house of the Lord. If there's no struggle, there's no progress. The devil wants you to just be quiet. Just let it slide. Don't say nothing. Yeah, I got cancer. And I need somebody to pray with me. Don't tell nobody your business. Where do we get that from? We succumb to the devil because we don't want to talk about these things. The human sacrifice was against Mosaic law, but Abraham lived about 5 centuries before that law. So that's for any of you theologians who would say that why would God have him sacrifice a human? This was before that law was even put into place. So this is a test. The value of testing. Should we look forward to testing? The purpose of testing is to discover strengths and weaknesses. Trust in God helps us build on our strengths and minimize our weaknesses. Even if we don't understand why we are being tested. This was the case for Abraham. Should we look forward to testing or should we dread it? We dread testing when we're not prepared. Why aren't you prepared?
David made 2 proclamations. He made a lot of them, but 2 of them to stand out right now. And it's, first of all, he said he will not give unto God anything that didn't cost him. First of all. And the other one he said in the 139th Psalm, he said, where can I go that God is not? And I say that to say this. God asked Abraham to do something that he knew the outcome was already. It wasn't a matter of sacrificing his son. It was a matter of having the desire to do the will of God, which is to offer his son. And God asks us to offer the best that we can just because he wants to make us the best that we are. Not because he wants something from you, because God doesn't need none of us. We need him. But he's just trying to make us what we need to be.
Obedience is going to make us what we need to be. Hey, man, you going to let me walk past you? This guy here, man, this ain't my cardio session.
That's why he told Abraham to give his only son that one that he loved. He wanted to know then whether he loved him enough to sacrifice him to the Lord, because the Lord had more to give him than he thought he had.
That's solid right there. And a lot of times we don't understand that when we are selfishly examining our situation. But we need to understand that if God is taking this from me, he probably got something better for me. We move on. It says, early the next morning, Abraham got up and loaded his donkey. He took with him 2 of his servants and his son Isaac. When he had cut enough wood for the burnt offering, he set out for the place God had told him about. On the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. He said to his servant, stay here with the donkey while I and the boy go over there. We will worship, and then we will return. We will come back to you. Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and placed it on his son Isaac, and he himself carried the fire and the knife. As the 2 of them went on together, Isaac spoke up and said to his father, Father? Yes, my son, Abraham replied. The fire and the wood, they're here. Where? Where's the lamb? Where's the lamb for the burnt offering, Dad? Abraham answered, God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. And the 2 of them went on together. When they reached the place God had told him about, Abraham built an altar there and arranged the wood on it. He bound his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Then he reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. The journey and the preparation. We are not told that Abraham said anything in responses to God's command. His actions speak for themselves. He wasted no time carrying out his assignment. He left the next morning. This reveals his faithfulness and obedience to God. Abraham initially followed God in hopes to receive his promises when he was following God's promises, knowing he may lose his son to whom those promises were connected. Let me say that again. That might have been a little confusing. Abraham initially followed God in hopes to receive his promises. Now he is following God's promises, knowing he may lose his son to whom those promises are connected. Did y'all get that? That was loop-de-loop, but I wondered, that was solid. Here's what I like. The trip to Moriah was 50 miles. It took him 3 days to get there. So what that means is he got time to think. It wasn't impulsive. You know, sometimes we do things impulsively. Earl, I want you to join the Men of Valor. Okay. I don't want to join the Men of Valor. But now I'm in it. Because I impulsively, that was just an example, man. That was just an example. Dang. But y'all know what I'm talking about. How many times have you been in something and don't want to be in it? Like, man, why I say yes to this? Wasn't no God in this. I didn't pray on this. So you just got to imagine for 3 days he going, Lord, you sure this is what you want me to do? I'm going to sleep on it, Lord. You know you got 2 more days. Holler at me, right? Here I am whenever you want me. I'm here. For 3 days. But none of those days does he turn around. That's very important. Because sometimes we talk ourselves out of things. And that's a trick of the devil. He's going to tell you that you're not good enough. Why would I teach Sunday school? I'm no Bible scholar. They're going to get tired of listening to you. You up all the time. Why? Just sit down. Oh, I'm talking about personal conversations now. Why you still go to that church? You know it's many other churches that you could go to. Oh, it got real personal right there. Just for me. Why are you doing that when you really could be doing this? Do what God tells you to do. Abraham initially followed God, and I told you all that. This gave Abraham enough time to back out. God gave him the test of time. His obedience was not impulsive. Here's where I really wanted to get to. The servants came to assist preparing for worship service. Watching the donkey. Please hear this, y'all. Hear this. Watching the donkey is always overlooked. They couldn't have worshiped if they couldn't have left the donkey. Servants are needed in worship services. Ushers, security guards, custodians, the praise team, the music ministry, children's church. These people make worship a little bit more easy. We overlook the donkey watchers. We overlook the people that's keeping order, the people at the door. We overlook the people that make the programs. We overlook the people that clean up when you get up and run out of the church. I saw Mary McGowan clean it up last week after service. What if she hadn't? The first thing we'd have said when we came in here, this nasty. Don't nobody do nothing. Don't nobody. Well, you are servant worthy too. We overlook the donkey watchers. We can't do that, y'all. But here's the thing. They made worship easier, but they also witnessed what happened. And now they're able to take their stories to the masses. Holding the mule is important to worship. Abraham said, we are going over there. We will return. Did he mean to lie? Or did he trust that even if he sacrificed his son, God would bring him back to life? I'm going to jump down because I'm out of time. They go over. He ties the young man up, and it's very important that we understand that the young man was old enough to have a conversation. So he was old enough to scuffle with his father. He could have ran away. My little grandson right now loves running. And sometimes you can't get him. He gone. But it doesn't say that this happened, which means that he trusted his father. Now, you got to get that picture now. He tied up on an altar, and his father, the Bible doesn't say he said or did anything. Abraham trusted God, his father, and Isaac trusted Abraham, his father. What a joy to have a God-fearing father. Don't overlook that the son carried the wood, because so did Jesus. He carried the wood to sacrifice himself, so did Jesus. He was doing what his father said, so was Jesus. You got to have these connections. If you don't have these parallels, then you don't understand. I'm running over, I done ran over, but let me give you this. Because of Abraham's obedience, God made a way. He didn't see the ram in the bush until he did what he was supposed to do. We sometimes want to see it before it can't be that way. Say that again.
Do you think his son had a conversation with God before he went to go to the
It's quite possible, but that is the reason why you bring your kids to Sunday school. Who's to say that the son was not in tune with God as well? If you bring your children, even when they don't want to be here, sooner or later they start realizing that, you know what, this Jesus thing got something in it. This God thing got something in it. I can't pass this OST. I might need to pray. I got these people chasing me. They bullying me. I might need to pray. I don't want to smoke drugs. I don't want to do drugs. I might need to pray. See, what we fail to realize is that we don't bring them, there is no connection. If there's no connection, then there's no learning of how to worship and sacrifice yourself to the Lord. Thank God for Get Up, We Going to Church.
God talked to Abraham, and Abraham knew God as his father. Isaac talked to Abraham, and he knew God as his father. Isaac said, where is the lamb? So he didn't have no understanding of it was him in all this. He was looking at the picture the way the picture's supposed to be saw. But he followed his father because he trusted in him.
Trust and obedience in your dad. Trust and obedience in your dad.
I know I don't say much here, but I wanted to know, it's a funny thing that the ram was caught in the thicket. Looked like he would have made some noise. Look, God is so great, he could have just appeared there where God wanted him to.
I think that's just the case, Tim. That ram wasn't there.
No, that's right.
The ram wasn't there until Abraham did what God told him to do. Hey, yeah, look what I found.
Do you think there was any kind, and you're talking about time, and how much time expired. You said about the journey. And this boy, you think that boy just laid down willingly and he there was no struggle in the sacrifice?
I think so. I think so, Earl, and I also think that I think that has a lot to do with how that boy respected his father. At this point, Earl, I was born in 1974. Disco and afros was out. But we're talking about a different time. But that is a definite observation, but it's also a testimony to what type of father he was and what type of son he was. Exactly. When he had. Yeah. Yeah. So here's where I'll end. Because that ram was caught in the bush, plans were changed. Sometimes the Lord tells you to change your plans. Thank y'all. One more week and y'all will be rid of me. Thank you so much.